Hello guys, and a big welcome to the last recording of this decade, which is a funny thing to say. So let's get into it. I want to share with you a few stories and articles to go over, and I've also done a little bit of analysis just to kind of help you to see what I'm looking at and the way that we're looking at it as well. So sadly Shannon can't join us today because he's enjoying his holiday over in New Zealand, so I'll be taking this session with you guys today and doing the walkthrough. So let's begin. So jumping on to the first piece of big news which we've kind of seen in recent times is really around YouTube and what's happening here. So if anyone's not familiar, YouTube released some censorship to say that they couldn't, or a lot of people that have created videos via YouTube around cryptocurrencies had actually been delisted and taken off. And the real reason behind it was because they believed that they were providing harmful material, which this is very controversial. So in my personal opinion, I think this is a fantastic thing if they target it in the right way, because there's a lot of people that are providing content out there that, in my opinion, is very questionable and causing people to do act in a certain way and take actions because they recommend this coin, etc. So I see it as somewhat of a good thing, but I also see the downsides of this. It's a decentralized, or we're trying to move to a decentralized economy, and when you have a centralized player like YouTube, which is obviously owned by Google, who we know are heavily involved into cryptocurrencies like Chainlink, etc. I do question their motives behind this. So a quick update. Apparently it's been released, and I'm yet to see the full outcome of this, but apparently it was a mistake, and they will be reinstating all videos that have taken place on the platform and what's been removed. So very interesting to see. I've got quite a few friends who have been heavily impacted by this, so I'll be interested to see how that rolls out. But the fact that they are somewhat controlling, obviously, the content flow, even though they have an underlying investment in the space, that is to me an interesting play, but I see it as good at the same time. So I wanted to put this up as we're now 6 months away roughly from the next Bitcoin halving. So just a quick recap, the halving is when the amount of coins that go into circulation will be reduced. Right now it's 12.5. So when each block's mined in the 10-minute period, there's a release of 12.5 Bitcoins to the miner as a reward for processing the block. Now that's going to be shifting to 6.25. So a halving in supply is obviously a significant change to supply and demand laws. And I really like this article because I find it quite controversial. I like controversial articles where it's saying, relax, hold on, there's not that much data. Just because we've heard of people potentially saying that it may increase in the lead up to and afterwards, that you don't want to be triggered by this. And the arguments in this, which I found quite interesting, is a lot of people don't actually know what the halving actually is and what it means. So it's maybe for more advanced people in the space, which there, in my opinion, isn't many people. And also it talks about miners representing the largest part of the market here and what impact that could mean for them. So very interesting article, and let's see how that rolls out and what happens there. But what I wanted to do is just pull up this. So this chart here is Litecoin. Litecoin has recently gone through its halving, which took place on the 4th of August this year. And what I wanted to show is just the lead up to this, because there was a massive growth that happened in the lead up where we saw from this chart here 254% growth from the start of the year, so 31st of December 2018, all the way through to when that peaked out at the point of the halving. So very interesting, great returns obviously in the lead up, and then we saw the significant downturn afterwards here. So that's very interesting to see. what's happened in this particular scenario and case, where we've seen a 60% downturn since, and naturally that's been the entire market. So what I wanted to do is also pull up here how far away we are from the Bitcoin halving, which is 135 days. So the lead up to there, we're starting to have a serious countdown in the amount of days. This is dramatically reduced, obviously day by day. And what I wanted to do is have a quick snapshot of what's happened in the past. So let's look at 2016 when the last halving took place. And that went through till I think it was the 9th of July, if I'm not correct. 9th of July 2016 was the last halving that we actually saw take place. So the 12 months leading up to that, from the end of 2015 through to here, we saw a significant increase, 65%. So that is somewhat of a substantial return to any investor over that 6-month period. But what happened with Bitcoin was after that case, when the real supply and demand jumps in. And that's when we saw a huge growth. And obviously you can see, hopefully this box isn't in the way for you guys. So you can see the amount of increase that happened following that period. And that's the really interesting part for us to see now and what happens going forward. So do be aware of that and have a look at what's happening. Whilst we are on the screen, I will quickly zoom in here and let's just have a look at what's happening in recent times. So we have the big buying levels, the big buying volumes that we've spoken about before, which were around the 6.5, 6.7 mark. And we saw a lot of retests down to that level in recent times. And it's reacted quite positively off of that. So let's see what happens coming up in the recent time frames that we have. And keep a close eye on this, because it looks like at the current time it's retesting where we're at. Let me shrink this down to 5 days so we can get some better data here for you guys, so you can see a bit more about what I'm talking. So in the last few days we've seen a retest of the lower levels here, and then a sharp increase back up. Are we going to see a retest of a very particular buying level, which is just under 7,000? That will be interesting to see what happens there, and if we have a drive going forward. So keep your eyes out for that if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting to invest still. Something that I found really cool is 3 huge records set through 2019. Even though the price has certainly increased, which is fantastic, we haven't seen huge increases like prior years, but we have set 3 new records. And this is the kind of data and information that I like to look for. Why is that? It's purely because I like to look past price and see what other factors are actually taking place. So transaction count was a big one. We saw the highest amount of transactions take place, which was in May this year, 12 million transactions. That was more than the highest price, or the highest point when Bitcoin's peak was at nearly 20,000 USD in 2017. So 11 million transactions taking place then. So this is fantastic numbers to see. Transaction volume. So this was based through BitMEX and the volume that they were seeing there, but 4 billion in a single day. I always like to take an objective view of the information that I gather, as I've always spoken to you guys about. And my only question here is, I know there's a lot of bots trading. So in terms of the amount of trading that's happening, I do sometimes question the transaction volumes and what's happening there. But good to see as a general overall trend. In this point, we can only take the face value of what we're seeing. And the final thing is hash rate. So the amount of hash rate comes from the amount of computers that are completing the algorithms and mining for Bitcoin. And we can see that there's been a significant rise here in the hash rate, which is a fantastic thing. Even though the price hasn't moved significantly over the year, we're seeing a lot more people mining the space, which in my opinion is only a fantastic thing, and speaks dividends of where they believe the future's going in the space. So despite reduction in price, minor profitability going down, there's still a huge commitment around the mining of Bitcoin, which is fantastic. So moving on to slightly different news here. This is obviously a huge thing that's happening. So the US launch airstrikes in Iraq and Syria. So that's a very interesting thing that's just happened around the airstrikes that have taken place. And what I find is interesting around this is there's been training taking place, if you want to call it training, where Iran, Russia and China have come together, and they've just finished up a 4-day long joint naval strikes. So they're saying we're coming together, and this is going to somewhat they're protecting themselves naturally and doing some training, but this is really to try and get the US to move out of the Middle East and move away from their dominance. Now, why I think this is quite interesting, in particular with Russia and China coming together, is something that I mentioned to you guys before, is BRICS. So BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. They're trying to move away from being pegged against the US dollar and doing a lot of their transactions in the US dollar. So these countries equate to 23% of global world GDP. So that is a huge number. And this article is so interesting, talking about how they're trying to look at potentially pegging either against gold, which will be a mind-blowing case if you are an owner of gold, but also cryptocurrency as well. So they're trying to look at creating a cryptocurrency that they can peg and use as their new currency. So do watch out in this space, and I highly recommend doing a bit of further research into that in particular. The last thing that I've brought up is the gains of Bitcoin over the last decade. So moving into the space just before the decade, and then the returns that we've seen. So 9 million% returns in Bitcoin, which dwarfs obviously every other investment. And a really interesting statement here: Bitcoin profitable 89% of its lifetime. So if you're able to understand the trends, which obviously you guys have been had the knowledge and support in this area, and then you can really start to play this market. But a long-term trend, you can see it's profitable most of its time. As long as you don't get caught in the hype, you can position yourself well. And here's some pretty cool returns there. So I thought that was a really nice way to kind of finish up the last recording of the year, which is really exciting for us. And yeah, wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. Obviously that's been past now, but have an awesome time with your family transitioning into the new year now. And I wish you all a massive 2020, and I look forward to being a big part of your journey, leading you all to success. So thank you for tuning in and listening to this, and hopefully you got some really valuable content out of this and things that you can start to take into consideration when doing your analysis. So thanks guys for tuning in, and I look forward to speaking with some of you very soon, or seeing you at the event coming up in February or March. Take care guys.